Welcome to another episode of the Career Keynotes podcast with Tincup and Gardiner, where William and Andrew chop it up with respected Silicon Valley talent acquisition and HR leaders to get the real story behind their career journeys, along with an insider's view of how companies engage with candidates. Let's face it, these days, finding the job, much less nailing down an interview, is not easy. This is a rare opportunity to learn firsthand what companies are looking for in a candidate and the best ways to engage with them. And now, here are William and Andrew.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you. Producer Bev, William, really excited about you guys. I think I say the same thing, but I am really excited about today's guest. I've known Torin for not long enough, but very impressed with his knowledge, his experience, his narrative. And as you know, the point of the show, the purpose of the show is to make an impact and educate people and give them insight into what goes on in talent acquisition and HR. And I think you're really going to appreciate Torin's perspective and Torin's lens. So Torin, I talk way too much. Rather than me tell everybody how smart and cool you are, would you just take 2 minutes and give the audience some insight into who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to just say thank you to producer Bev, to you, Andrew, to you, William. I want to also say I appreciate you for, having me on the show. Looking forward to our conversation. What I got to tell you is, man, we are still 15 months into the pandemic. Half of the United States has been vaccinated. Mike Tyson is 53 years old, and I still wouldn't get in the ring with him. And we got issues around paying women what they are exactly worth. So that being said, Torin Ellis, diversity strategist, risk mitigator. I do consulting inside of organizations, helping them to optimize their D&I strategy. I speak globally as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I do a podcast with my incredible pod partner, Julie Sowash, titled Crazy and the King. And then aspirationally, I'm looking to build a media presence around the subject of diversity and inclusion. So that's who I am.
What a great intro. And well, we've only got about 12 million subscribers, so I don't know how much of an impact we're going to make on your intention, but anything we can do to help facilitate that would be our distinct honor and pleasure, because you've got a great message and a great, just your intro. Your great intro part. By the way, the other part is to make it entertaining. I think, we can always disseminate knowledge and wisdom, but to do it in a way that's interesting and fun is always cool. And you get high marks in that area. Okay. So,
but think about it, Andrew, real quick. Think about it. I heard something the other day that people were actually like, there was a learning moment for us, because I heard that people are looking more at YouTube than they are actually downloading and listening to the podcast. Like, I know a lot of people who take the YouTube and the video portion and extrapolate the audio, make it to pod, put the video up. And I heard yesterday, like, people are spending more time watching the video than they are actually walking around and listening to YouTube. So you all are doing the right thing. We got to make it entertaining.
Right on. And I think hopefully I was included in that study, because that's me. There's nothing you can't find on YouTube anymore. All audiobooks, Robert Greene, Ryan Holiday. All of these, so much content's on YouTube, and I think I got lucky. It was just the easiest for me to do, and we wanted to start somewhere. But you're right, you can cut it up and slice it up, and you can do all kinds of good stuff with it. But we just wanted to start somewhere, and yeah, that is interesting. So thank you for that, and hopefully we will achieve that. I'm not worried. So Torin, one of the things we always say is, how did you get to where you are? You have so much passion and so much conviction in who you are and what you do, and you're darn good at it. But my gut tells me that when you were younger, you didn't say, hey, you know what? I am going to be an evangelist for diversity and a TA, practitioner. So if you could just walk us through at a high level that journey.
Yeah, so I would say, born in South Florida, raised in the Midwest, left to go to the military where I think I probably got my first taste of leadership, where I was able to kind of orchestrate how my platoon marched up and down in basic training. So I got to call out the cadence and sound like the drill sergeant. I still can do it just a tad bit these days. Left the military. First job out of the military, I was a security officer at a retail complex. Like, I absolutely hated it. It's probably the worst job that I ever had. Because I was so bent on, when I got out of the military, like, I have to prove to these people that I'm smart, that I'm capable, that I'm able. And I didn't. Like, the first job was a security guard in my own vehicle. It was demoralizing in every sense of the word. And that was down in Texas. Left Texas, moved to DC. First job in DC, I'm working in a call center selling, I think it was hot sauce and jellies on behalf of like a police union or something like that. Again, another job that I absolutely hated. And so my transition out of the military was a humbling experience. My transition from Texas to DC, a humbling experience. Broke through and got an interview at MCI Communications in 1993. And I remember when I interviewed, I asked the person in HR, I said, what does it take for me to become a leader, to get promoted? And she told me, and I said, I'm going to do it in a year. She said, no one's ever done it in a year. Cool. I was in a call center environment. I got promoted in 10 months. And so all I can tell you is that when I was at MCI Communications, I grew one of the most successful sales teams in the entire country. And so it was a result of that experience, hiring my own people, developing and inspiring and motivating my own people, teaching them how to sell on the phone, to sell long distance service when people wanted to hang up on you. It was that experience that said, well, you can go and start a recruiting company. And that's exactly what I did.
So naturally, the first thing, because I didn't know the backstory, and I want to hear the Texas story offline, but I came to know you when you were already in recruiting. We were talking about sourcing, we were talking about recruiting, we were talking about talent acquisition, and even HR, even in our first conversation. As you look back at your career, what's been the toughest placement or even the toughest role that you've had to work on, and why?
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, I remember when I met you, William. I want to say it was around 2010 or 11, something like that. Could have been a little bit after that. But I remember when we got on a phone call, and I can't remember how that phone call was orchestrated, but you revealed in that call that you were following me. And I was pretty new at that point to like Twitter and some of the other platforms. And all I remember is, wow, William is following me. And this is no exaggeration, but you were so approachable and willing to help me, like you wanted to help me. And so I appreciate you for that. And we've always been the way that we are right now since that very first meeting. Right. And I would say that my hardest search, and there were so many of them, there have been so many of them, but I would say I'd probably have to say that my hardest searches were in 2001, right before the bubble burst. And the reason why they were so incredibly hard is because one organization had me to source C-level talent. All of these were C-level searches, as a matter of fact. One organization had me working on 2 C-level searches. I think it was a COO and like a CMO or CFO. I can't remember, so long ago now. And then the third organization wanted me to have like a VP of sales or something. Both of those companies went out of business after they hired my talent. So for me, when I say hard, it was hard because, I can't remember now how much time went into finding those incredible individuals. But what I know is that those three were the catalyst of me filing bankruptcy in 2004. Because in 2001, the bubble burst. Organizations later in that year don't pay or stop paying or begin to stop paying. I couldn't collect on them. And you're talking about fees that were close to $300,000. And then there were some other smaller searches where the same thing happened. Sum total, I was in for about $370,000, holding on, hoping that that money would come to me. And when it didn't come in 2004, I had to file bankruptcy. So for me, those three searches were the most painful. Forget about not being able to close out a requisition. Forget about how tough a requisition is. Doing the work and not being compensated for it, a struggle.
What a great answer, and not really where I thought you were going to go. I thought anything from MCI. I thought you would have gone in any direction. Good for you. I appreciate your transparency and your vulnerability. And I'm embarrassed to say I'm not surprised by the veteran piece, but I wished I had known that. That's something I'm particularly passionate about, particularly as it relates to veterans transitioning into civilian workforce from the military. That's a huge underserved market. What other than the rather obvious leadership and discipline lessons or teachings from the military, what really stuck with you, or do you think you learned that has served you well as you've moved through your career from the military, and in what branch and what your MOS, all that stuff? I love that stuff.
Yeah, I was a 202, a communications analyst in the Air Force. And so that meant I carried some degree of a clearance. I later learned that what I thought was a top secret clearance and like top of the line was probably a couple of layers below like the top security clearance. But nonetheless, I still carried a security clearance. And I thought that, we all right. Like I tested into that discipline, if you will. So here's the lesson that I took from the military. You got to understand the backstory, though, because when I grew up in Davenport, Iowa, all of the branches were in the same little retail complex. So you could walk in the Army, collect the pamphlet, walk
right across from the high school. Were they right across from the high school?
Not that close. They weren't allowed to be that close, but they were up the street because Davenport, Iowa, like literally you can get from one end of town to the other in less than 20 minutes. Like Davenport, Iowa, like it's not the biggest place. So I remember going inside of all of the branches, Beverly, you'll like this. And I asked them two questions. I said, look, now here I am, young Torin, young warrior, 18. I'm not going to the military for discipline or any of that. I'm going because I want to travel. I don't want to go to college. That's it. I have two well-educated parents. I didn't want to go to college. I want to travel, make money, period. Walked in and I said, look, I don't need to hear nothing else. Two things I need to hear. How much money am I going to make for basic training? And how long is it? That's all I care about. How long do I have to put up with your bullshit? And how much are you going to pay me to put up with it? My decision was made to go to the Air Force because the basic training was only 6 weeks.
Where'd you do basic training? Did you do that down in San Antonio?
San Antonio.
Yeah.
Shortest basic training, 6 weeks.
My brother did the same thing.
Yeah, I said, so look, do 6 weeks, go to my training station to learn how to be a communications analyst, and then go to my first duty station. All of that worked perfectly. Let me tell you where the snag was. This might be the longest answer in the interview. In basic training, you have certain times that you can use the phone to call home. So I learned after about a week and a half, what the rhythm was, what the cadence was. I knew when we were using the phones, who else's phones were not being used. Probably in week 3 or 4, I decided to venture over to one of the other dorms and use the phone because I had free reign to use the phone versus having 40 people behind me saying, hurry up.
Yeah.
There's a guard that guards the patio for every building. And I told the guard, I said, look, this is not my building. If the people in this building come down and want the phones, I'm out. I'm gone. But as long as it's free, let's just get it in. Let me use the phone. So that happened.
Who's it hurting?
That worked. Who's it hurting? So that worked for about a week, Beverly. Next week, my drill sergeant comes down and he said, Torin, I understand you've been using the phone over on so-and-so's patio. I said, yeah. Yes, sir. And he said, we're not supposed to do that. I didn't know that. He said, well, you're going to learn. He put me back in basic training by 2 weeks. So now my 6 weeks becomes 8 weeks. And what he said to me, and I'm going to paraphrase, but what he said to me, he said, Torin, I see something in you. He said, I see an incredible individual. I see somebody who's smart, hardworking, unafraid, but I see a dude that's got a temper. I see a guy that needs to be broken. And he said, I'm going to try everything that I can to break you, but I'm going to do this because I know what it's going to be like for you as a black man when you graduate. My drill sergeant was black. He tried everything that he could to break me. That didn't work, but I never forgot that conversation. And today, if I could go and find Sergeant Cook, I don't even remember his first name. I just remember him. If I could find him today, I would absolutely tell him, you said it, you told me, and I've listened ever since. So that's my military story. It was for me following directions.
I love
feeling as if you can get around it, but understanding that you will pay the price if you get caught.
I love it. This is a bit of a non sequitur, and probably a tough question for somebody not named Torin, but something I've been struggling, since I programmed the event, something I've been struggling with is discerning people that talk a good game about diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, and equality, and those that actually do it. And, I'm not sure if I know you have a radar, and I know you do a lot of consulting, so you've got a much better radar than I do. But I have difficulty. I have difficulty when I talk to a leader and they say they want to do something. We want to hire more veterans. It's a great example. We want to hire more LGBTQ plus community, etc. How do you discern? And again, this is a complete non sequitur, but not. How do you discern whether or not they're really telling you the truth, or whether or not they're just telling you what you want to hear?
Yeah, I think, William, when I got first committed myself to doing D&I consulting back in 13 and 14, really like 13, one of the things that I would say is when I get into the engagement, first person that I want to talk to is someone in the C-suite. And Andrew, I want to see their meeting schedule and their travel schedule. And people would always say to me, well, why do you need to see their meeting schedule? Or why do you need to see their travel schedule? I said, because both of them tell me what's important to them.
That's genius.
You can go and you can try to dig through the data and the charts. I just need two things: where you're going and who are you meeting with. So if you're meeting with, provosts and presidents and directors of career centers and community organizations and large mega churches and, consultants like myself, if we are on that docket, that calendar, and when I say these academic institutions, then it means it's important to them to have that relationship between their organization and that academic institution, that community group, that church, that whomever. So if you're not meeting with those types of people, then I got to question, or I at least have the option of questioning, is diversity important? Is inclusion important? If I look at your travel schedule and all you are doing are going to high priced dinners, golfing outings with your friends, conferences that are, attended by mostly other peers, if you will, but you're not going to fundraisers for underserved, underrepresented organizations and audiences and communities, or you're not going to places like HBCU campuses or Hispanic serving institutions. You're not speaking at events where you may not be able to get a fee, but you are talking to a class of young people that may eventually, if you're not going to those places, then I get another opportunity to question whether or not D&I is important to you and to the organization. And so, William, today, although I may not ask those two questions, I'm still asking for, has your leadership made a declarative statement? Has your leadership reallocated resources? Has your leadership determined that they are going to hold people accountable? So if all you have is an announcement on your website, or you've put out a press release, that's all you've done, then I still get the chance to question whether or not D&I is important to the organization. We are in the time right now. Last week, we paid attention to the 1 year anniversary, if you will, of George Floyd's murder. Some of the statistics I've seen have varied, but one that stuck with me was $50 billion in commitments were made by organizations. And I think the number of how much of that has actually been spent was 0.5%.
Right.
Wow.
And real quick follow-up, Andrew. The declarative statement, the resources, which by resources you mean time, money, and energy, accountability. I'm assuming transparency is somewhere in that mix, but you didn't call it out specifically. Is that what you mean by accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, if you say it's important, then you need to show me it should be modeled that it's important. It may be attached to the compensation. It may be something we discuss in our, quarterly meetings and absolutely. So transparency, tacit understanding, and certainly, even though I ran through those three really quickly, there's probably a list of 20 other things that I could have said, 100%. But you get the point. Yeah, you get the point. The reason I do it that way is I need to synthesize why this work is important. Because the moment I make it muddied, complicated, arduous, then folks start running for the exit. Oh, we ain't doing that. It's too hard. Mm-hmm. That's what they've been saying. You make it hard and challenging, it gives them the excuse to cut the tether, to say, well, you know what, we tried, we good. No, I want to make it really easy. This is how you measure whether you're doing it or not.
Torin, for a while my face hurt because I was smiling so much through that Sergeant Cook story, and I loved your allegiance and the impression it made on you, and I think it, good for you, because I would have been the same way. Like, what's the workaround? I thought maybe you were going to tell us you were closing some wrecks on the phone, but anyway. So listen. Producer Bev has a question, and then she said, no, I changed my mind because it's going to change the direction, but sorry, Producer Bev, we're going to ask your question. So
we can always get off and refuel and hop back on.
Seriously. Right.
Okay. Well, here's a quick question. When the sergeant told you you won 2 more weeks of basic, did that make you mad, or did you get it?
Furious. Furious. Are you listen?
No, you embrace it now, but I was just wondering how.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, because and that furiousness had to be contained, because had I shown and expressed even more of that, he could have just said, well, I'm gonna make you start over basic training, period.
Oh yeah. Right.
And this is full transparency. I don't tell the story often, but I will tell you, I struggled in the military, not because I couldn't do the job. I didn't struggle in the military because I was stationed overseas, Producer Bev. Bev, I didn't struggle because I didn't get along with people. I struggled in the military because they have this thing called officers. And so by the time I was 21, 20 or so, I started to find myself having to engage with the officers more because now I've gone through training. I'm at my official duty station. You know, I'm getting my assignment of my shift. And I struggled with people that just because they went, and I still feel this way. I struggled with people that just because they went to college, automatically, you know how to do the job, the work. So it's the same way in recruiting. I don't care if you got a degree or a certification from SHRM, or you've gone through some Boolean course or some other stuff. I don't care about any of that. If I know how to do the job, then I know how to do the job. And I need you to respect me for being able to do the job. There were far too many people in the military that because they were an officer felt like they could get real slick with that conversation. And so I had to contain myself with Sergeant Cook. And in the end, there was an officer who called me a boy and I jumped across the table and punched him in the mouth. And so it was a result of that where they said, we don't really think you really cut out for this. And so we're going to let you go. And so I got put out of the military 6 months before my 4-year mark, which is cool. I still got an honorable discharge. I just didn't have to serve my last 6 months because there were certainly some other incidents. I just don't take a lot of bullshit.
And amen. Well, and I think, that's part of what makes you successful. In my opinion, Torin, is your passion, your fire. You get stuff done. And just to that officer wrap, it's funny, my son just shipped off a couple of weeks ago to the Coast Guard, and he did happen to go to college, and good for him, but he was adamant that he was not going to do that for the very reason you just described. He wanted to be on equal footing with everyone. He did not want to be, hey, I'm with, and I give him credit, and that was all his doing. I had nothing to do with that, but I have a lot of respect for that and for you. And I think it's funny. I thought you were going to, Officer Cook, and you were going to, do this, the anger, or that. And I would rather call it passion than anger or conviction or belief or whatever. But I think that's in large part what makes you successful. And oh, by the way, you eat your own dog food and you bring that passion to bear in other areas of your life.
Absolutely.
Which is why I wanted you on the show. Okay. So I think it might be an okay time, unless someone has another recruiting question I guess. Okay, go ahead, William.
Yeah, it's recruiting and HR related. It's because you are probably one of the best people I know at having tough discussions with people, but making people feel comfortable having tough discussions. It's a real art. It's a real gift, because you make people feel, I've been in the room when you've made people, when you talk about things that might be really contentious, but yet you've made them feel comfortable. And I think that's some of that is just your experience, and some of it is just your personality. You can put people at ease and then talk about really difficult things. So my ask is, when you talk to HR, and especially the folks that we love, from sourcing, hiring managers, recruiters, and candidates, how do you coach them and consult with them about asking tough questions and answering tough questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about being committed to where we say we want to go. And I think for far too long, we've coddled complacency. We've coddled mediocrity. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm not suggesting that I'm a virtuoso and I'm the best in D&I, but what I am suggesting is that I'm authentic and genuine. And if I say that I'm coming in to help you with this, it may mean that we have to have some uncomfortable conversations, explore some data that's not all that refreshing, even though we've hit refresh on it a couple of times. It's, so
you said it in your monologue that we don't right now. We have difficulty paying women and on an equal basis as we do men. Like
Absolutely.
that's just a truism. That just is what it is. You can go in
Absolutely.
company A, company B, having that discussion and have the art of having that discussion, which is a difficult conversation for everybody involved. Not
Yeah. So I
it's
think
difficult.
it's not so much so, William, and I love the question. It's not so much so around coaching them. I think it's more around just modeling. And even if I don't get a chance to say it, what I do try to tell people is that for me, the two most powerful words are love and process. If I can't tell you that, I at least try to show you that I am here because I love the work that I'm doing. There's some degree of love that I have for you, human to human, brother to brother, brother to sister, sister to. I just try to emit that type of persona and energy and presence, and it helps to build that rapport fairly quickly. It helps people to understand, well, wow, our organization has made this investment in this consultant, so they must see something in him. And there are times where people have that wall up and they're like, they're looking with the side eye like, who's this cat coming in trying to, help us with DNI? I got a client that I'm working with right now, and a young lady has been telling them for years that they need to do more. And then they bring me in after George Floyd. And then they put me on the phone with her 2 weeks ago. And I said to her, first thing that I said, if your organization made you feel like your contribution was less than valued, I want to apologize for them. I didn't say good morning. I didn't say, what are we going to talk about? Or here's our agenda. I said, if your organization has devalued you at any point in the last 2 or 3 years, I want to apologize for them. If at any time in this conversation, I've made you or make you feel like, man, I've been telling them this forever or whatever, pause me and let me hear your contribution, because I want to be able to go back to them and say, guess what we talked about? It was the same things that she told you all 2-3 years ago. I need you to understand how much I value you. So I don't know if I really coach people how to have uncomfortable conversations, but I have a very keen desire to build relationship with people as fast as I possibly can. Now, listen, I'm not coddling, centering racism, people that are absolutely against diversity and inclusion initiatives. I'm not the person who's trying to convince everybody else that putting a noose up in the building was just another joke. Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not that interested in DNI. I will absolutely excommunicate or, what's that when they put you in quarantine, people?
Disavow.
Absolutely. We will. And there are people that have been in that scenario. But William, I think it's really around, I think people really see your energy, or they can feel your energy. And so for me, I just try to let them know, like, look, we said that this is what's important. We got to go hard as we can to get to that objective.
So quick follow-up, Andrew, if you don't mind. This weekend is the 100th anniversary of Greenwood and the Tulsa massacre. We'll just call it kind of what it was. How do you advise corporate folks to celebrate or discuss difficult historical events? And that could be just Japanese internment, and maybe we got millions of them to pick from. But the idea is that for so long, we've basically acted like it didn't happen. That doesn't work. What do you advise people on how to embrace history, the good and bad, the ugly, the terrible, the tragic? Greenwood is one of those examples of our history. It's a horrible representation of what humanity can do, but we can't ignore it. So that's not, I mean, we've tried that for 200 or 300 years. That doesn't work. So what's your advice for corporates to then say this? What is that?
Minor edit, William. Okay. Minor edit.
Bring
it has worked for certain people.
Oh,
and we got to make sure we honor that. It's only as of last year that you could walk into a number of organizations and hear rumblings in the hallway or see communicate
Fair.
internally that uses the phrase anti-racism training.
Yeah.
Like
They
you
did
didn't see that in many organizations before June of last year.
100%. Even Ferguson, it got it on people's minds, but it didn't change the actual discord internally.
Yeah, social justice, social issues, and social justice have begun to become more absorbed
Mainstream.
and present in the last 4, 5, 6 years, if you will.
Good.
But my direct response to that is an organization can't respond to everything. So as important as Tulsa, Black Wall Street, and the other 400 examples of Black Wall Street, because let's be very, very clear, there were so many of them that were happening, which is why I have a problem with people who say, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
No, you got to understand, Tulsa happened in the 20s.
Oh, I know.
We
100 years ago,
slavery.
21.
We finished slavery in what, like 1876, 77, something like that?
It depends on how far you extend Jim Crow, but yes.
So within a maximum or some limited window of 20 to 50 years, you had these types of communities all across the country.
Right.
And white folks was mad about it.
Yep.
Because we were circulating our dollar with one another. Burned it down.
Oh, I know.
So organizations can't talk about everything.
Right.
But what I try to say is have some degree of a communications charter, if you will. What are the things that are important to the organization? What may have impact on the community geographies and where you are doing business? What may have impact on the way that you develop products and services? What may have impact on how you recruit and where you are able to get that creative innovation from? And what may have impact on your succession planning and headcount management initiatives? You can't speak on everything, but you can certainly speak on a lot of things. And here's the kicker. A condition of progress is to allow those that are suffering to speak their truth. Right. So if Greenwood or Tulsa causes me some discomfort, if I as an individual want to celebrate that, I don't need people inside of corporate America to tell me, well, that's not important, or that didn't happen, or when you raise the phrase anti-racism or critical race theory, that you're being a racist, that you are being divisive, and all of the other stuff that fragility nurtures. And we just can't keep centering around that fragility. We can't run after every bouncing or moving ball, but we also don't need to be centering people's fragility.
You know, I got to jump in. I want to answer what makes you successful and effective for me, and I imagine for audience, you as well, is transparency. It's like energy, what you said, Torin, energy doesn't lie. You know, you're eating your own dog food. You believe it. It's coming out of your pores. And if someone wants to make an impact or move the needle, then let's have that conversation. Because the truth doesn't lie. The data doesn't lie. People lie. And so that's what struck me right away when Donnie recommended you and you made that wonderful kickoff for that tout group. Okay, so but listen, we gotta reel this back in. So we're well past the halfway mark. So Torin, as you know, part of the show is, hey, how can we help people, diverse people, any people, veterans, people new to the job market, people that are stuck? What are some, I love talking to people, like it's in your DNA, like your Sergeant Cook story, just your Air Force story. When are we going to make the most dough and what's the shortest? Like, where you're going and how do I get there? Where's and so part of it is in your DNA. So I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but what are some practical, actionable things that you would tell someone that's struggling, that's cutting and pasting their resumes through Indeed, search agents, not getting traction, not getting callbacks, not getting anywhere or anything? With the caveat that, I know you're not a career counselor. Like, some people want to be doctors. Or I loved your comment, by the way, about security. Like, there's this thing, you're in the military. Okay, you can be a policeman and you can be a security guard. And that obviously, but that we don't need to go down that path. So what are some ideas or feedback suggestions you have for people like I just described?
Yeah, the first thing that I'm gonna say is pick up the phone. I wrote a book. The book is titled Rip the Resume. It may not, or you may have a hard time finding it on Amazon. I actually went to order 20 copies for this nonprofit in Minnesota. I wanted to donate the books to the young men to help them. And I had a hard time. I actually had to go back to my publisher to get the 20 copies. This was probably 2 months ago. But I wrote a book, Rip the Resume. And one of the rules inside of the book is pick up the phone. First and foremost, most people are sitting behind a keyboard because that's all they want to do. They just want to hit enter on a keyboard. They want to do cut and paste like you just said. I'm not trying to be one of 400 people getting an opportunity. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to say something like, hey, Andrew, I saw a posting for a role on whatever job site. Are you at liberty to share with me your email address? I'm not a person who goes against protocol. I'm more than happy to go to the website and apply. But if you give me your email address, I can send the document directly to you. You can look at it. We can hop on a call. We can talk about what you really, really like about it. If you hate it, we can talk about, I guarantee you're going to like it. What's your email address?
What's great about that is that's advice that crosses everybody. That's sourcers, recruiters, hiring managers, candidates. Call reluctance is your enemy. All right. So it's similar to Andrew's question, but really I want to kind of gauge the difference in candidates. The advice that you would have given candidates in 2011 versus advice you give candidates in 2021. So a decade later, you're smarter. Candidates are different. What's changed in your advice to candidates?
Nothing.
That's fantastic.
No, seriously, William. I mean, the basic blocking and tackling stays the same.
Yeah.
The technology changes, people change.
Be memorable.
I may have reached Andrew on this email address back in 2011. In 2021, he's at a different email address. That doesn't matter. The mechanics, the blocking and tackling of me getting in front of Andrew is the same. So you can form yourself to the new technology, finding the right hashtag to use on social media. Is this the right amount of words that are parsed through the ATS so that I can get seen? Do I drop all of the keywords down at the bottom of my resume in white so that the ATS doesn't, the person doesn't see them, but the ATS sees them? You can go through all of those tricks. We can do that. Or I'm gonna pick up the phone and say, Andrew, William, my approach to recruitment is timeless because I'm bringing you fire, period. I got to get in front of you. The first gate that I have to get over is I got to get to you. I got to get in front of you. Then the next gate I got to get over is have a great conversation. So the second piece of advice that I would give Andrew William is conversational mapping. And what do I mean by conversational mapping? So if I'm right now, because I've been looking at this camera the entire time, but if I pay attention to the screen, guess what? I'm going to look at the various things that are happening behind you all, and I'm going to weave them in my conversation.
Right.
Because I want them to know that the quickest way to build rapport is to let people talk about themselves and to talk about things that are important to them. So I'm going to do everything that I can to map my conversation in ways that allow me to insert small little data points, reference points that builds that relationship. So I'm not changing my style, William. And if I'm really, really good at what I'm doing, then I know that I need to be off of the keyboard and the computer because, everybody's doing that. I'm not
Right.
trying to do that.
It's game theory 101, actually, go with it or not. So while everyone's doing something, you do something different. And as technology has advanced, people have gotten lazier because they want to do things through text, through email, through whatever. And the simplest advice ever is get on the phone and be memorable. But also you gave some really sage advice past that. Andrew, go ahead, brother.
Real quick, how many times we've, since COVID, I said 15 months of COVID. You know how many times people have connected with me using my conference bridge, which has audio and video capability, but I tend to send them an email and say, we're only using the audio portion. Sometimes I'll forget to say that. I'll just give them the call credentials. You know how many times people have been on the other side and they've Torin, I can't get the video. Don't worry about it. We're not using video. You don't hear that sigh, but then I'll follow it up and say, I know you happy, aren't you? You happy we're not on video. And then they'll do what William is doing right now. They'll laugh, they'll smile, they'll sigh because they've been on video all day. We got to do something different. And so I said, ain't nothing wrong with an old school phone call, is it?
No.
Torin, you have no idea how refreshing it is to just talk to you. I can walk, I can just talk. So I don't change my style, William. I need people to be aggressive. Pick up the phone. And if Andrew doesn't want to give me his email address, what do? Hang up and get on the keyboard like everybody else.
And you make so the game is the same. The players have changed, but the game is the same. Get attention. How do I stand out? And, there's some little statistics. I loved your narrative on the video and the audio. Apparently, over 65% of communication is nonverbal, which is really interesting. Yeah, right. But I think your commentary on just audio is true, but it is just making that connection and whatever works. God, it could be fencing. It could be your dog rescue. It could be you're an artist. Williams bar in the background could open a million conversations. But your energy and your fire and your passion, you just can't, I don't know if it's a muscle or a skill. I think it's a disposition, but it's interesting because I know you know this, Torn, but in the military and in a lot of areas of life, particularly if you have controlling parents, you're not taught to advocate for yourself or to
Absolutely.
feed that fire that you have. It's like, hey, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. There's a couple more. I'll give producer Bev hopefully has one more question, but Torrin, at the end of the show, we like closing it with this little teaser thing, like your weirdest, most unusual, maybe entertaining or racy, not irreverent HR story or recruiting story or interview story. So I'll give you a second to think about that, and then go ahead,
Cool. I'm
producer
good.
Bev.
I got one already.
I know you've already dropped like 3 in the regular course of the conversation, which is why you're such a good guest.
Yeah.
And I am going to ask you at some point how people are going to get in touch with you. Again, we've only got 15 billion.
Your story is the
subscribers.
closer. So first you get to suffer through my question.
Yeah.
I love that one of your very early jobs was retail, because I think everyone needs to do time in retail. It's not boot camp, it's doing time, because
you just
it's
equated that.
humbling
You
and
just
it's-
equated that to prison.
I know.
Retail is detail, producer Bev. Like
Retail is detail. And especially coming out of the service and going into your own car security guard.
Yeah.
I weep for you. So that's good.
Yeah.
Now you gave us an example of 2 different jobs or instances where people told you, well, this is the typical thing, or this is the job, or here's the typical stretch to get to here. And inside your head, you went, oh yeah, I want to know where that drive comes from.
Yeah.
Where you got.
Great question.
Yeah. My father, he was my first warrior. And what my father always told me, he said, Torin, I'll never tell you that you have to be twice as good. Because in Black families, that is something that is often told to their children, that they have to be twice as good. You will still hear full-grown, tenured adults pontificating on how they have to be twice as good in the workplace because they believe that. My father said, I'll never tell you that you have to be twice as good, but that you do have to work hard. Mediocrity is not an option. Now, he may not have said it exactly like that, but my father was the guy who worked for Sears and Roebuck, which is the reason why we moved around from South Florida to Toledo, Ohio, and some other cities, ended up in Davenport, Iowa. So my father went to work, Bev, and he put a note up on the cafeteria board or whatnot. He said, my son will cut your grass anywhere in the city for $7. Now, I told you the city wasn't all that big, but it was 20, 30 minutes from end to end in a vehicle, not on the 10-speed. So what I used to have to do, and this is no exaggeration, I used to take that old school clothesline that you had in your backyard, wrap it around my abdomen, tie the ends to the handle on the lawnmower, hop back on my bicycle, and I would pull my lawnmower to the various places that I couldn't just walk my lawnmower to.
And it was a push mower, right?
Oh, absolutely. Please. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. How dare you, Bev?
All that fancy stuff.
Come on now. Riding lawnmower.
Yeah, riding more. I mean, come on.
I'm sure.
These kids got apps on phones that'll make the lawnmower go fast. Man, please forget. You had to push that joint. No automatic wheels.
Uphill.
No little lever on it to make it. No, you pushed it. So I had to pull my lawnmower and then cut the grass
on the road. I mean,
road.
come on. Bev has you on a John Deere.
So when you ask me, Bev, where does it come from? Where does that fire? Where does that spirit? Where does that come from? It comes from me not expecting a person to give me anything. I'm not expecting you to go easy on me. It's not that. And we all want a break. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely want the inside track to the next, six-figure mandate. I absolutely want the inside track to a person who says we need a speaker to come in, and I absolutely want that hookup. I do. But when I get that opportunity, I'm coming to blow the doors off.
Good for you. Yeah, well, you've done that today, my friend. You did it you do it every time I talk to you. Okay, so have you got a kind of a memorable...
A memorable one for me, and I can't give you all of the detail because I don't remember it. But in that time frame of the economic collapse of like 08, it was somewhere between like 08 and 10, if I'm not mistaken. I get a phone call and the person is like, Torin, I need you to talk to my man. He's looking to move and wants to do some things in marketing. His background is entertainment, music, and, all this other stuff. And I'm at that point where I'm like, look, first of all, we just came out of an economic collapse. I know what it's like to not be making money from the bankruptcy in 04 and 01 and all of that. So, I'll talk to him. Whatever. He tells me his name, and like right now, I still don't even know the guy's name because I don't remember his name, but it was MC Search from Third Base. That was the candidate. So when the resume comes across, and I'm like, Third Base, that's like a rap group. That's like Flavor Flav time, right. Public Enemy, Big Daddy Kane. That's them. That's Third Base. And so the guy gets on and he is cool as a cucumber. And in my mind, I was struggling with, it wasn't the whole fandom thing. It was, if I can be honest with you, and I will, it was more around, wow, I hear him having been on that pinnacle, and now you're looking for a role in marketing, and you're using some old no-name recruiter named Torin to help you. What is that like? What's that feeling like? And of course, I couldn't ask him that, didn't ask him that, right, because I'm maintaining my professionalism and I'm trying to be as much of a connector as I could be, because I didn't have any accounts in any entertainment or I just wanted to try to be a connector. especially after I knew who it was. But I listened to him, and the human in me was like connected to and reflecting on my pain in '04. Like, what's this cat going through?
To be at that pinnacle, to be at that place, MC Hammer, there's a jillion stories like this. It's not just a fall from grace, but all of a sudden the market moves away from you, and now you're left with, what do I do next?
Yeah, we always talk about and think about these people like, where are they? And sometimes we don't, because they've fallen off of the radar, and we've just moved on to the next person who's tantalizing our, energy and whatnot. But it was a special moment for me.
So 2 questions, but one question is, toughest interview question you've ever faced, ever, as a candidate or a consultant, but toughest question you've had to consume.
Would I cut my locks?
That's
a hell
nice,
no.
clean answer. Good for you.
Yeah,
that's a hell. That's a hell no.
And let me say this to you. I want you to know. I want you all to know that I've had a number of people challenge me around my facial hair when I was in corporate America. But in this particular instance,
Would you cut your locks?
It was from a Black woman.
Wow.
Who asked me, would you cut your locks in order to be able to work with us so we can go into other large accounts like American Express and Time Warner? I mean, it was a sweet deal. We'll have to talk about that another time.
May I ask you how you answered?
I said, this true story. I said, if you make the deal as sweet as you've made it,
it's just hair. Got it.
Gone.
All right. So the Andrew does this this bit, and he knows who the speaker is or who's the quote from, but it's about vulnerability, the thing that we ask for from people, and it's tough to give, right? So I'm going to ask you right now, what's currently either breaking your heart, making you cry, or keeping you up at night? And be as vulnerable as you can.
Yeah, breaking my heart,
making you cry,
making me cry,
or keeping you up
at night. Wow.
Yeah, well, I don't remember really asking it like that. I mean, that's
well, how would you ask it? Real quick, how would you ask?
It's more of an observation. I would have said, and you've already done it. All the whole way through this interview, Torin, you've been vulnerable. It's Brene Brown. Vulnerability is the first thing we want from other people. It's the last thing we're able to give. Your story about bankruptcy, I've been there. I don't know anybody that got, too many people that got out of 2008 without, and that's where if you've read Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way, everything I learned, I know. I mean, everything I know, I learned, and I learned from failing. It's that old adage, Torin, about, where good judgment comes from. It comes from experience, which comes from bad judgment, like your extra 2 weeks in boot camp. We learn, but your vulnerability it allows people to connect with you authentically. You're so transparent. And you've done it at every stage of this interview with every one of your stories, because not people like, hey, I don't want. And by the way, that's the other thing that allowed you to connect with third base, because you've been there. You're like, because I've been there. There's that old expression about be careful who you're stepping over on the way up, because they're gonna step over you on the way down, or something like that.
Let me give you something to hold on to.
Okay,
Let me give you something to hold on to.
Because we are out of time, and you need to tell people how to get in touch with you, but go.
I'll do it quick. In 2008, because I had already experienced the bankruptcy and experience from 01 to 04, when I saw where the market was going in 2008, coldest move I ever exhibited in recruiting, I reached out to a client and said, look, I want to be your third party recruiting agency. And they said, well, we're not really hiring. I said, I promise you, I can get you all of the top performers from your number one competitor. Check this out. I made over $100,000 from that client. And let me tell you what I did. I went and got a job at the competitor. So inside of working, like literally, I was clocking in. I couldn't help any more clients because I went through training in Dallas, Texas. I actually was working 8 to 5, but after a bit of time, I was getting into the system and pulling the top 20 reps out of every major city and just dropping them over in my client.
Dude, that is genius. That's what I'm talking about. It is that, and that's not a skill. That's you can't teach that. You can't learn it. You can hear it on a podcast and you can maybe deploy it, but that's what makes you successful. And that's a great way to tap out.
I think I probably made close to $200,000 from the client, and I kept the job from April to the week of Thanksgiving. So whatever amount of months that was, and the salary there was $55,000 plus commission. So, all in, I definitely made over $200,000, and it was easy.
But you know what? Fortune favors the bold. You got to play big to win big. And when you play big, you lose big. And
you can find me. I know we are.
Yeah, tell me. Yeah.
You can find me at Torin Ellis across all of social media. You can find me at my web, torinellis.com. You can listen to the podcast, crazyandtheking.com.
We're going to put all that in the everyone listening, like and subscribe. Producer Bev, if you want to put that thing up about feedback and questions, rip the resume. Let's dust that manuscript off there and get that back into circulation, bro. At least lay it down on YouTube and audio. I'll listen to it and put it on our channel. I'll put it on our channel. So, and narrated by the author. Who better? Okay. This has been great. Audience, I give you Torin Ellis. Torin, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. You killed it. You did not disappoint. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next week with more wisdom and sagacity. And everybody have a great, I'd say holiday weekend, but we don't know when this is going to drop. Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Keynotes. For more killer content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We welcome all comments and questions and are grateful for any input regarding future content, topics, and guests. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.